we're going to introduce the panel that is presentation of highlighted works of Area 2, Institutional Service Learning Programs, moderated by Ángeles Soletic from the University of Buenos Aires and CLAYSS, and she will be introducing. Good morning. So we will be starting the second panel on research works related to issues related to the institutionalization of service learning. We have 4 presentations. We're going to ask the researchers to take 12 minutes for their presentations because we are a little behind schedule. And we're going to start this panel by presenting a research called The Social Capital in Service Learning. And it has a question: bridging gaps or reinforcing bonds in Latin American elite schools. The presentation will be done by Ezequiel Gómez Caride, and this research was conducted by him with Ignacio Barrenechea, both also members of CLAYSS in the case of Ezequiel, and both from the University of San Andrés in Argentina. Let us start.
Muchas gracias, Ángeles. Bueno.
Thank you, Ángeles. The research question that we thought of with Ignacio was, to what extent do service learning programs promote the social capital? That is, the creation of bridges among people, among realities, and the promotion of bonds among groups. Let us give you some context. The framework was elite schools in Latin America. This is already a very important selection. Then we're going to give you some clues about it. And there were participants from 11 countries in Latin America. 16 coordinators of service learning. I mean, these coordinators were responsible in these schools for service learning programs. As you know, many of these schools were part of international networks, like the International Baccalaureate, and within that IB, they have this subject matter that is community activity service, and within that curricular, that is where these proposals were included. Apart from the interviews, we took reflections from the students about their experience. As Danny mentioned about reflectivity. So the approach tries to show how these service learning experiences were conducted in these privileged educational environments. And something about the social capital. It's Bourdieu mentions a set of real or potential resources related to a long-lasting network of institutionalized relations of knowledge and mutual recognition. Then in the US, Coleman, he's like the father in the US academia of this concept, and he mentions social capital that is defined by its function. In colloquial terms, we can speak of the agenda, how many contacts you have, what types of contacts you have. And that is the agenda that allows you to have access to certain positions in certain places. There are societies where the social capital has a different weight than in others. For instance, here in Argentina, we say that in order to obtain your first job in Argentina, research shows that the social capital is very relevant, more than in other societies. You can go to your history and think, how did I get my first interview? And the social capital, then Putnam, another researcher, divides it into 2. He says there are 2 types of social capital. The bridge social capital that allows you to go to others, and the one that strengthens the bonds with others, that is bridging and bonding. So what we analyze with Ignacio is how much of this bridging and how much of that bonding was there in these social service learning experiences. And this is a key variable by Coleman, that is reciprocity. Reciprocity, he says, for the social capital to work, there must be a possibility of reciprocity. If I'm at the bus stop and I see that an acquaintance is driving by, the neighbor, that person knows that if he picks me up, probably at some point I will return that favor. So this concept of reciprocity is key, and that's why it works better in not so urban societies, this idea of the social capital, because there's kind of a more limited network. About the methodology, very quickly, we start with the coding of the interviews and the open materials. This revealed more than 700 codes, and from there we started doing a thematic coding that revealed some aspects, some patterns. And I'm going to deal with this very quickly. The promotion of the intra-bonding. The service learning experiences of these students cultivated valuable personal and interpersonal skills, leadership, critical thinking, teamwork. And somehow here a student says, visiting the soup kitchens with my friends was a memorable experience. That strengthened her connection with her classmates. Do we want that to happen? Of course. We want these bonds to be generated. Besides this experience, the investigation, the research reveals, empowers students. One student says, I will soon finish high school. I don't know what I'll do later, but thanks to service learning, I know I want to do something to help people. Their position changes as social agents, agents for transformation. That's another impact of these experiences. Definitely, I can make a difference, she says. So that is about the first category of service learning and its connection with the bonding. Then about the bridging. We saw that these students said that these experiences allow them to break with the stereotypes. Basically, Tobias there at the bottom says, most of my students were born in a privileged environment. That's why they really talked to their parents about how they came to enjoy that position, and many thought that those poor people chose to be like that. They didn't do anything to improve. They were just lazy. So in their thinking, those people that with whom they shared the experiences were there because they were lazy. Sometimes many adults have this perception, but what matters is that service learning experiences help them break with those stereotypes. Besides, we also see that it generated empathy. A group of students actually wrote letters to members of parliament saying these children need us. We are also responsible, which is so necessary today in society. But Sandra also said that some of her students started to participate more in local churches, but very few sustained it. And another coordinator, Pablo, says that this experience can have long-term effects in students, but only in 10% of the cases. So this is anecdotal because this is not a longitudinal study. Now, what are the threats to this creation of bridges? First, the issue of paternalism. Pablo and Tobias, two coordinators, criticized these programs that somehow were focused on the students giving. A service learning model based on the approach of charity or paternalism. And other coordinators, Ruben and Marta, said that the students found themselves in these positions as messiahs or saviors, not as peers. And then there's a lack of sustainable engagement. This decline makes it difficult to break with this division between us and them. And then there's no follow-up as to what happens with the students after graduation, where they manage to sustain those connections. So the main findings, what we saw in the research, was that these programs cultivate this social capital, this bonding. The students are in power, they acquire leadership skills, critical thinking, teamwork. They usually reinforce the social capital within the elite groups. But the approach to the marginal communities is limited, which generates concern because of the reinforcement of the social gaps. So there, the question we bring in the research is, how can we promote certain reciprocity between these two worlds or universes? Because the question is, can there be a true bridging social capital when the reciprocity is so improbable? How often these students go in to do these experiences, or those that receive the experience, how often will they be able to collaborate with the elite students? There's a tension there. So what we say with Ignacio is, in order to promote reciprocity, we have to try and find bridges. What are these two worlds similar at? They're both citizens, they're both human beings, and they both have environmental challenges. So what we discuss in the research is to generate conversations about what is common about these two different worlds, co-creating shared objectives related to citizenship, humanity, environmental challenges, generate common territories. That is not given. On the contrary. So the challenge we saw there was how in these service learning experiences, when we discuss this with Ignacio, is the solution is more and better service learning, not less. But how do we do that more and better? Well, a hint was this one, generating these spaces, these common territories between those two worlds. And as a conclusion, well, many of the things we already know, to bridge the gap from intention to impact, co-designing projects with marginalized communities, prioritizing real reciprocity, integrating critical reflection, building long-term partnerships, not specific interventions, promote an interdisciplinary learning to understand complex social problems, the participation of students, and the final one, developing metrics to evaluate the students, the results, and monitor the impact in terms of non-cognitive learning. What happens the day after, once they graduate? That's all. Thank you.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Ezequiel. All right, now we'll move on to the second presentation. Now we are going to position ourselves in the higher education level with 3 different papers, moving from a smaller to a larger size with Universitate. So now I'm going to give the floor to Wilmer Hernan Cruz Gutierrez from the Munich University in Germany. His paper refers to an institutionalization case in the Santiago de Compostela University. The title of his paper is Institutionalization of Service Learning through Internal Network Articulation. Good morning to you all. Let me start with my presentation. Can you all hear me? I should speak up. Okay. This is one of the results of a 3-month stay at the Santiago de Compostela University. It is a beautiful place. I don't know if you have visited that place. This is the main destination of the Way of St. James. You know that the starting point is in different countries: France, Belgium, Italy, Germany. And the main purpose is to get to Santiago. Santiago has a peculiar characteristic. 1 out of 4 of the inhabitants of the city is a university student. So the Santiago de Compostela University plays a very important role in the city dynamics. So in this research stay, I've learned that they have been there for 15 years, so they have gained a lot of experience. But let me explain to you why we focus on the institutionalization of service learning. I usually focus on 3 different dimensions. The cultural dimension in the first place, documents, laws, policies, philosophy, culture at the institutional level, that is reflected on official documents. Then a process dimension that focuses on interinstitutional management, financial management, HR management, the curriculum management, and then the structural dimension. In this case, usually we have to focus on specialized units for setting the framework for institutionalization. Experience indicates that understanding the structural dimension is key to understand the institutionalization of service learning, especially focusing on specialized units. This is a milestone actually in an institutionalization process. So, in my research, I found that there are other ways of identifying the structural dimension to promote institutionalization of service learning.
La literatura también nos dice que no solo existe.
Literature also shows us that this is not the only option to foster the institutionalization of service learning from a structural dimension. In some cases, there are committees that are set up first, and then the specialized unit is created. In other cases, the service learning unit is created first, and then the committees are formed, bringing members from other parts of the university. In some cases, you have both options occurring at the same time. In the Santiago de Compostela University, they consider that this is a bureaucratic process, that this is not something that they need to create once they have already created other structures. So they try to build on what has already been created, in order to avoid the risk of adding more bureaucracy and more complexity to the institutionalization of service learning. Interviews were conducted with faculty from 8 different programs in human, social sciences, engineering, some managers, the vice president and the dean, some faculty and students and community partners. What did we find? Well, we looked at the 3 dimensions. So first, they incorporated service learning into one of their official documents in the cultural dimension. This was the strategic plan for the university. And most of the official documents on service learning referred to social responsibility. They didn't want to connect this with education innovation. This is quite interesting because that would provide legitimacy to service learning from another perspective in the institutional context. Then they move to the process dimension and they start working on training their faculty. This is an essential step. In this case, they resort to the faculty training department in order to incorporate service learning there. Then they work on dissemination. They make calls for trained faculty to be able to apply for funding for projects. Once again, they are trained again, and they are recognized at the end. So the final step here is the recognition process. And the structural dimension brings together 3 important programs: the faculty training department, the University Inclusion and Engagement Service, that is the link between the university and the community, and the research group, that is the one that kicked off the institutionalization process in the university. And it was the group that reflected the results and the outcomes in the university to external parties. So, faculty have different training offerings. So there is one that is called miscellaneous, and service learning is included there. So not all faculty have to be trained on service learning, only those that are interested in that. As part of their lifelong education, faculty members have to undergo training. Faculty members who accept to be trained on service learning later on are certified as coordinators. Only coordinators can take part in the calls for research projects dealing with service learning. Then there is an evaluation committee that has a representative of the students department, the quality program, the training program, and the community program, and they decide which projects have to be awarded the funds and how feasible they are. Projects that are accepted are funded and also supported from a management, planning, execution, and evaluation standpoint. And the results are examined. Then they move on to implementation, acknowledgement, and dissemination of results. Students receive a certificate that proves that they have worked with the community. This is quite practical for graduate students that can look for a job, and then they can claim that they have worked for a certain number of hours with the community. And in the internal university system and in the external system, that is in the higher education system in Spain as a whole, there is recognition for teachers or faculty innovation initiatives. So this may be favorable for faculty members in their own process inside the universities or also in other institutions. So they are recognized for having worked in this area. So when faculty members say that they do this out of love and passion, well, of course, they have to something to demonstrate that they have actually done that work and have undergone that training. This is also important to maintain the system. And as I said, the research group also plays an important role, and this takes us to the next pillar that is of importance for faculty members. In this case, in this university, there is a requirement for faculty members to do research. So that research group, the SCULCA group, is always willing to give visibility to all service learning related projects. And we know that in some cases, they have an impact on students and on communities. Of course, that is the ultimate purpose, but sometimes the results or the impact is not disseminated. So with the SCULCA research group, they try to disseminate the results of these works outside the university. And they also share the results with other faculty members through articles, through papers. And this is important for faculty members who want to do some work outside their classroom and also, at the same time, fulfill the requirements. So, why is this model of this university interesting? Because there is faculty training, participation in projects, They can work on practical projects. They can also consolidate knowledge. They can receive acknowledgement. And this also allows students to start growing their professional career while they are still at the university. So, in terms of strengths, the literature indicates that specialized units are a milestone, but there are also some barriers that hinder achieving this milestone. One of them is the shortage of human resources for these specialized units. In some cases, the university has to hire new staff, or they have to redistribute tasks so that other people in other departments can also be part of the specialized units. So, by working on what is already existing in the university allows the university to save money. So they have identified what they do in each unit and how they can work as a network. That's why I refer to the network component in the title of my paper. There is logistic and administrative support provided to faculty because they work as a network. So from the vice president's office, with the faculty core, and with the community, there are different departments that are well established already in the university, and they coordinate their activities. They know what each of them have to do and how they can supplement what others are doing. So there is support from different departments in this model of institutionalization at the Santiago de Compostela University. What are the areas of improvement? Although this institutionalization model is valid and tries to coordinate different processes and departments in the university, it can be improved in some areas based on what faculty told us in the interviews. Although they receive initial training and they are trained in the process itself, there are some aspects that are still missing. They mention impact. For them, it is very difficult to measure impact in two fronts. One of them, among students, how they can really prove that or confirm that students have developed critical thinking skills or they have empathy. How many times they resort to reflection and they get this feeling that they don't know exactly how they felt inside the project. And then the other front has to do with the community, the impact that they are having on the community with these projects. This also leads us to a very interesting perspective with the community. And the community feels that they are ignored in these networks. So sometimes they participate in reflection processes, but it would be interesting to see how they could be involved with committees where you have the president's office represented, you have representatives from the community and university department. So it would be interesting also to have representatives of the community in those committees. They know that with their traditional knowledge, they can enrich the academic knowledge. So if we are thinking about a network, it would be interesting to consider their participation in committees so that they guarantee the voice of the community. So this is an area for improvement from the point of view of a network. Faculty also say, since we are working as a network, why can't we expand ourselves? Why can't we reach out to other departments or have mentorships? Perhaps you can have faculty members who have been there for a long time that can serve as mentors to newer faculty members. And also to have an interdisciplinary approach, because if I'm an engineer, I may know how to teach something to students, but perhaps I don't know exactly the pedagogical aspects or how to convey knowledge to very young children, and a pedagogist perhaps has that knowledge. So it would be essential for all projects to guarantee this interdisciplinary component. That would be all.
Muchas gracias. Muchísimas gracias, Wilmer, y por respeto.
Thank you, Wilmer, and thank you for sticking to the time assigned. Let's move on to the second case. Now we're going to pass the floor to Luísa Mota Ribeiro. Luísa, if you can move here.
Presento mínimamente.
Let me introduce you. Luísa is going to present the case on institutionalizing service learning from the Portuguese Catholic University, where she's a professor and researcher. And this research is done with a team. I'd like to mention the other researchers: Carmo Temudo, Rita Paiva Epona, Sofía Nascimento Rodriguez, and Sara Serra. This is the team, and Luísa is here on their behalf. Thank you. Good morning. I'm going to try and speak in a mixture of Spanish and Portuguese. I hope you can understand. But the slides are in English. And thank you for mentioning the members of the team, because this is the first idea I would like to share. Because I work at the School of Education and Psychology at the Catholic University of Portugal, and my colleagues here, Carmo, is responsible for the unit for the comprehensive development of the individual, so she works with volunteering, and Rita is responsible for the social responsibility office, and then Sofia and Sarah support our work. This is the result of a university effort to have people working full-time and part-time with us to implement the methodology at our university. And I really like to highlight this idea, because sometimes we see teachers leading this work, others we see people related to volunteering. And I think that here an important factor for the success of our work is this joint work. The faculty and the schools and the services related to volunteering as well. Thank you. So our university has 4 campuses that belong to the same university, and we are implementing service learning for 5 years now. We have the commitment of our university is formalized in our strategic development plan that is finishing now. It started in 2021 and it's finishing this year, 2025. So we are evaluating what we've done and defining new objectives for the next plan. This plan has defined that until 2025, we should provide at least 2 subjects per degree and 1 subject also in each master's degree with service learning. So I'm going to share our trajectory and the results. And this reflection will be done with the contribution of Andy Furcus rubric and the European guidelines for the institutionalization of service learning. Our project that we called CAPS, because it's Catholic Service Learning, that's the acronym. This project started in 2020 and finished in October last year, and with funds from Portuguese. So we would really like to thank Portuguese and Universitate and CLAYSS, because all I'm sharing now would not have been possible without that support. And this project had the goal of implementing and disseminating service learning in our university, but also in other universities, promoting pedagogical innovation and social responsibility. We defined several activities. We created a national coordination team with 12 members from all the campuses, and also people from the charity service, from quality assurance. And that's also a very important element in our national coordination team, to have somebody from quality. This is just for you to have an idea of our evolution. We started the project in 2020, just before the pandemic, as many projects here. We are participating in this network of Universitate since 2021. In 2022, we received this honorable mention for our project Empower to Protect. Then in 2023, we also were awarded research award at a conference in Barcelona, in Spain. And then in the same year, we received 2 grants for the Universitate small research grants. And we also we've become member of the Transform from Europe network, that is also doing a lot of international network work as a network. Then in 2024, we also had the privilege of receiving the first prize of the Universitate Awards with a project that works with the elderly. And now we are starting a new project with a grant where we are going to develop and validate a scale for motivation based on the self-determination theory. And then we also received an internal award at our university for a service learning project as well. So we're very happy and we are very enthusiastic to continue. We've published several articles, for instance, for a project related to sustainable development goals, and also about purpose in life, that is available here. And then another one with our partners from our hub about institutionalization, and also comparing service learning with traditional teaching learning methods. So looking at the 8 semesters from 21 to 24, because the data from 2025 is not ready yet. I'm not reading everything, but we can see that the number of experiences of service learning is 124. We can see here that we have involved around 2,500 students, 176 community partners, and more than 40,000 recipients. Looking at the process now, based on this rubric by Furco and the European guidelines, the references are there, you are all aware of that. We can see that Furco's rubric gave us 5 dimensions. We've participated at the leaders training, so we've done reflection. Each university conducted a reflection about where we were based on this rubric. And also we have 10 key guidelines to reflect on our process. I'm going to do this quickly because I don't have much time, but in dimension 1, we have several criteria. Our self-assessment is that, for instance, in terms of strategic planning, we consider we are on stage 3, which is the most basic stage. This is the capacity building, so we are starting to have the stage 1 is the initial stage, stage 2 more capacity building, and stage 3 is more institutionalized. So in this institutional level, we consider we have evolved quite a lot in the past few years with the formal commitment we have and the structure that we have created. But if we see, for instance, in the faculty support and the faculty awareness about service learning, we feel we have a lot to work on, because there are still faculties and coordinators, for instance, that are not very aware of what service learning is. So we feel we have a lot of work to do here. And here we can also see the incentives and rewards. That's an area where we have to work a lot. We say a lot, but we need more action in order to implement an incentive system. So we consider we are in an initial stage there. When we speak of students, we think we are doing medium work. But in terms of students having more leadership, more initiative, there we feel we can still do a lot more in this dimension. Where we speak of community partners, we also feel that it's an area where we want to invest a lot in the next year that starts now in September. We want to increase the knowledge of community partners about service learning so that they can play a more active role throughout the process of design of the service learning projects. And the final dimension, institutional support. Here we do have concrete actions. We have objectives in our strategic plan. We have a coordination team. And we have the funds that our university, our president is really investing in all this work. So here we can see this color, gray, in gray. Here we can compare. This is our self-assessment. Thanks to CLAYSS training. And we feel we are at that level, and this is where we are now. So we are excited because we see we are evolving, but we need more. I've heard by Forco that it takes 15 to 20 years. So after 5 years, we are making good progress. Now, looking at the European guidelines, I'm going to refer to this very briefly. The first guideline is about institutional involvement. Here, well, I'm not going to repeat myself, but there are several criteria here. And we also feel that there are several aspects of the institutional involvement that are present, but others need more work. And we need to do it much better. And if we see, for instance, guideline 2 about the funding, we see that we have support, we have a team, we have people working, and we've managed to have more funding, but we need also to have more measures. For instance, the last one, to have a system for measuring the social return on investment. So we see here that this process, this reflection process, for instance, having a coordinating unit, we do have it. We're also systematizing our processes to support all teachers, coordinators. So we are doing our part. And here recognition, that's a very sensitive area. And we have this difficulty of comparing with other pedagogical methods because we hear that. But we recognize service learning, but there's also other learning, so digital learning. So how are we going to do it? Are we going to favor one pedagogy, but there are others? And the university wants a diversity of methodologies. So we are working on it. We are analyzing the teacher assessment to see where service learning can appear as an indicator for the assessment for teachers in the different schools. In teaching, we also have several aspects to improve. In teaching, we have lots of areas to improve. Also in research, we have several products, but still certain aspects we need to consolidate. And also in communication, advertising, and social justice, awareness, partnerships with the community. This exists, it is strong, but we need to improve our processes. And I'm going to finish with just some very specific data, and then I will finish. And if you have any questions, of course, we can discuss it later. So here we can see that we are implemented service learning in the 4 campuses, but not all the levels, not all the grades are involved, all the master's degrees. So we need to expand and recruit more faculty members to implement service learning. And another thing that worries a lot is that we have several service learning projects that are implemented only once or twice. So that is a big concern for us, because why is it that teachers leave? Why don't they stay and implement the projects for longer? So recognition, the time, etc. And I'm finishing with this. Here we have the impact, what the students and the teachers say about the skills they have developed, the application of the knowledge. We also have, here I want to highlight that students feel that their lives have changed. 70% of those students say that their purpose in life has changed with service learning in just one semester. This is a very interesting outcome and very encouraging. And as I don't have time, there are several evaluations
de los profesores.
here, appreciations from students, from teachers, community partners. And finally, this final reflection, that is that we feel that we are managing to achieve many goals, but we also need to do some work. So the recruitment of new teachers, recognition, the sustainability of the methodology at our university. We consider that these 2 tools can be very useful in this reflection, involving all faculty that can help us a lot. And also, we want to improve our collaboration, interdisciplinary collaboration, and this commitment to social transformation. So thank you. Apologies for the time, and thank you for listening.
Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you so much, Luísa. This was an excellent presentation. And you also stuck to the time allotted. And now we will have one last paper from Uniservitate. The title is Uniservitate, Evaluative Culture for a Fraternal World. María, Rosa, Tapia, and Lorena are going to give the presentation, but the team is also made up by Candelaria Ferrara, Andrés Peregali. So here we
Muy buenos.
Good morning. For some of you, this may sound more familiar. Some of you are more familiar with Universitate. Others are just learning about the network. So first, we are going to give you an overview in order for you to understand what the Universitate program is about. As you can see by its definition, the program seeks to generate a systemic change in higher education institutions, specifically Catholic institutions, through institutionalization of service learning. Institutionalization is very important here. We are not just promoting service learning, we want it to be institutionalized. And service learning should be tool to achieve the integral education mission that we mentioned earlier. As Luísa said, looking at the research papers on the time it takes to institutionalize service learning, the program was created with an original period of 10 years. Porticus is the supporting organization, and CLAYSS takes care of the global coordination of Universitate. The program is managed based on 3 lines of action. One that has more to do with theoretical knowledge, knowledge production, publications to systematize information on spirituality, on institutionalization. As Daniela Gargantini mentioned earlier, we looked at cases from different institutions in different countries across the world. And also we looked at the development of service learning in different regions. And there is a digital repository available on the Uniservitate website where we have 1,000 resources that are already cataloged, and you can access them freely. And we hold global symposia in order to promote discussion and exchange of information in order to have theoretical knowledge production. You will see a wide diversity of members, but more importantly, we have put together a very rich network. We have some communication tools that we use in our program. The program was created in 2019, and we had to call off our initial meeting because of the pandemic. So we started connecting remotely. And when we finally met in person, we started hugging one another, and we were able to deepen the bonds that we had established during the pandemic. We will also focus on recognition. We have a global award. Every 2 years, we try to give a prize to the best service learning projects and experiences in different parts of the world. So we don't seek to create a competition at the global level. We recognize experiences in the different regions. Although we work at a global level, we also focus on institutions. That is why we also work at the institutional level. Through the regional hubs and through the program, we provide close support to a group of institutions so that they can proceed to institutionalize service learning. We also do train-the-trainers, courses, and general training sessions in CLAYSS and in the different regions, in trying to respect the identity of the various regions in this polyhedral program that is Uniservitate. In the last 2 columns, you will see that we refer to monitoring and evaluation. That is why Lorena Schalber is here with me today. She's an expert on this subject matter. And we also look at monitoring, evaluation, and learning that is external and has to do with the way the program is managed. So as we said in the introduction, we try to make a systemic change in these institutions through the institutionalization of service learning. When we talk about Uniservitate, first we are talking about a program, then we talk about a global community, and many of us consider it a large family because over the last 6 years we have felt part of a family. This is a program that is coordinated on the basis of 7 regional hubs. To manage the program, we have 1 hub in Latin America coordinated by the Pontificia Catholic University in Chile, in the US and Canada by ACCU, that is the Association of Catholic Colleges and Universities. Then we have 2 European hubs, one in Southern Europe through the Deusto University, another one in the north of Europe through the Leuven University, and we have another one for Central and Eastern Europe and Middle East and north of Africa, coordinated by the Eichstätt University. We have the Tangasa College coordinating the African hub, and the La Salle University coordinating the Asia and Oceania hubs. So we have 7 regional hubs. So we are providing support to 46 universities right now. But based on all the work done through the program, last year we launched a membership program. Now all the documents have been signed and we have more than 70 member universities, and several others have started their application process. So today we have more than 120 universities participating in the program, but these are numbers that keep on growing. So we are facing a big challenge, how to come up with a monitoring and evaluation model that can capture the diversity of the program. So when we looked at monitoring and evaluation in CLAYSS, we tried to see how to focus on institutionalization at 3 levels: at the global level with a program, at the regional level to capture the particular characteristics of each region, and institutional level. So Lorena is going to tell us about the processes that we carry out with the different institutions in the program. We also have our own monitoring, evaluation, and learning process that is managed by Sigla, a consulting company. This allows us to work on continuous improvement. So we are always looking at the lessons learned in order to see how we can make progress to make the program even more effective and more sustainable, because this is essential. As we have already said in previous talks, when we conceived the monitoring and evaluation model, our first point of reference was Andrew Furco's rubric. He works on 5 dimensions that Luísa has already described. But given the particular characteristics of this program that targets Catholic universities, we couldn't leave the spiritual dimension aside. So we added this dimension to the self-assessment rubric, and then 2 more that have to do with the program. One that has to do with theoretical knowledge production, and the other one, global management, what we are doing from CLAYSS to make sure that the program works. I will try to be brief because Luísa has already described the different dimensions, but here you will see some pictures to illustrate these dimensions, because since we work on service learning, we learn from our experiences in each visit and in each contact that we establish with the institutions that participate in the program. When we refer to the service learning philosophy and mission, it is important to see how service learning is defined in each institution. There are different abbreviations used to describe it. In some cases, we talk about community engagement, but also what are the rules in the institution that make service learning explicit as part of their programs. And it is also interesting to see how institutions participate in some congregations, the Marist, the La Sallian, the Jesuit, the Salesian, and how those frameworks favor institutionalization of service learning in those institutions. The second dimension relates to teachers, faculty. Of course, it is important to consider recognition, what level of knowledge teachers have on service learning, what training they are offered to deepen their knowledge, and as Luísa said, what kind of acknowledgement we give to these teachers, what incentives are offered to teachers participating in this kind of service learning practices. The same applies to students and to graduates. That is extremely important for us to see not just the opportunities that are offered to current students, but also how to follow up on graduates. When we visited the African hub, we were able to see some concrete experiences that were led by university graduates. Based on their experience while they were studying at the university, they decided to set up NGOs to promote certain topics, and they opened the doors to new students also to develop projects. Community organizations and networks and strategic partners. To what extent these networks are consolidated, to what extent there is a common understanding and an open attitude towards working together, institutional support. Someone mentioned coordination team, funding. But more importantly, what the structural dimension is. Just for illustrative purposes, I have included these pictures. On the right, you see a meeting of presidents and rectors within the framework of last year's symposium, but this happens every 2 years. We want to make sure that the top authorities in universities understand what service learning is about, so that universities can truly commit to supporting service learning. And the best institutional support we could get was the one from Pope Francis at the Vatican, through a private audience where we talked about service learning. We also added the spiritual perspective of service learning, as I said earlier. Here we try to learn from students' testimonials and experiences. Andrés is going to give you a presentation on the Catholic University of Argentina, the impact on student spirituality as a result of their participation in project. And we also see that through the different charismas, we can nourish with different reflections from the Lasallian perspective, how to incorporate proposals that have more to do with praying, and how we can deepen our reflection within the framework of service learning. The same applies to the different congregations that we are working with. We focus on things that are often not talked about, because we look at the spirituality of human beings on a personal level, but not in an academic setting. So somehow we are trying to bring to the fore some elements that are essential to us. Our internal monitoring and evaluation process in Universitate tries to measure the level of institutionalization of service learning achieved by education institutions that participate in the program. In this table, what you see is the results in different levels, initial, intermediate, and advanced level by region for 2024, for a total of 50 institutions that completed the self-assessment rubric. This is an online form that is self-managed, with different variables, indicators that had been agreed on with the program's sounding board, with the coordinating team at CLAYSS and the different institutions that serve as leaders for supported organizations. Although this started at the very beginning of the program, this form is reviewed on an ongoing basis every year. What I would like to highlight from this table is that we see a dynamic situation when institutions move from one level to another over the years. This table is for 2024, but in our paper we have some other figures. In 2022, for instance, there were 3 institutions that had switched to a higher level of institutionalization, and in 2023 there were 7 institutions that had moved to the next institutionalization level, according to this instrument, of course, from initial to intermediate or from intermediate to advanced. In 2024, there were 12 institutions that moved to a higher institutionalization level. It is quite difficult to achieve that, but it seems that this is encouraged by their participation in Uniservitate. So we are seeing now profound changes in these institutions. Another interesting aspect is that institutions did not only change their level of institutionalization, but also, in some other cases, they may have not moved to another level, but they start showing some signs of progress, subtle progress towards higher levels, and also they present some challenges. Here we are not trying to judge institutions by their institutionalization level. We just try to set some coordinates that allow us to start a discussion in an exchange, a rich exchange of information with institutions, with the coordinators of the program, with the sounding board, and with other stakeholders that may have an interest. And here is where external evaluation comes into play. So it helps us confirm that the internal monitoring and evaluation results are consistent and relevant to the institutions that are actually making all these contributions. Now, I think I'll give back the floor to Rosie. I just wanted to say that we try to acknowledge everyone that participates in these processes. We are not just focusing on ongoing monitoring and evaluation. We want institutions also to take ownership of these internal monitoring and evaluation processes with the support of the hubs. But more importantly, here we see a strong sense of community. So institutions shouldn't feel that they are being evaluated, but rather that they are part of a community, and they may contribute to have an impact on the program sustainability with a strong commitment from all the participating institutions. And I need to acknowledge the board members who are here. You have already met Daniela and her team, but we also have Candelaria Ferrara, who is up there. She is our liaison with the regional hubs, because in order to gather all this information, you can imagine that you need to send out a lot of emails. But let me conclude with a special appreciation to all the people who contributed to the monitoring and evaluation process in the Uniservitate universities, because thanks to your efforts, we were able to do this work. So thanks to all the universities.
cerramos rapidísimo, seguimos pasados, no logramos componer los tiempos.
We are still very delayed, so thank you all for sharing these relevant examples of research in the area of service learning, their practices, particularly the institutionalization processes that allow us to see those different modalities, those particularities that respond to different stories, and particularly the rigor with which we need to think of the monitoring and evaluation processes, because that's the only thing that is going to generate substantial improvements in processes and guarantee the sustainability of service learning at the institutions. Thank you, and of course.